Brother Eric John Phelps, 24/7 World Radio. Welcome to the broadcast. We have Brother George Widger with us today on this March the 20th, 2024, coming to us with his astounding discoveries and meat to put on the skeleton of the fact that the Jesuit order rules the world through its secret societies, primarily high-level Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And George will have some things to tell us about that today concerning Haiti. So, again, it's March the 20th, 2024, and Brother George, welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thank you. As always, Brother Eric, it's a pleasure to be on with you.
It's always a pleasure to have you. So what are your topics for today, my brother?
Well, you already you gave a spoiler. One of the things, topics I would like to discuss is Ati, as they say, or Haiti, as we say.
I didn't give all of it. I just gave a little teaser. Okay, George. So I know you're going to fill in all the details for us.
Well, I probably should study the history of Haiti and all the problems they've had for the last couple hundred years. So I guess I'll have some homework between now and our next broadcast. However, before I do that, address any country or current issues, I probably should start out with my scripture reading, which is 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. And this may sound somewhat familiar. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they that err from the faith and pierce themselves through many sorrows.
That's right.
I'll repeat the first part. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Paul is not saying money is the root of all evil, as I've heard people say over the years, including many communists and socialists. See, it says so in the New Testament. You're not supposed to have any sort of personal wealth. Therefore, you need to.
That's why King Solomon said, money answers all things. So if it's so easy, why would he have a use for it? Did God make him so wealthy? And Abraham so wealthy? And David so wealthy? But go ahead, brother.
Okay, so therefore, you should not have any personal wealth. Therefore, you should hand it all over to the government.
We Jesuits run. Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Okay, you obviously shouldn't have personal protection devices, if you know what I mean. You obviously shouldn't have any gold or silver.
No guns, no gold, and no God. That's exactly what they want. That's why they got the Bible out of the public schools. That's why they took the silver in 33. That's why they took the gold in 33 and the silver in 65. That's right. Good old Jesuits and their Masonic Lodge. Go ahead.
Okay, so you made reference to the country in the Caribbean, Haiti, as they say, or Haiti, as we say in the U.S. This has been the situation for over 200 years, but definitely since 2010, since their earthquake. So you're talking last, 13, 14 years. Life has been especially bad there. And I know based on this.
But generally, they make it bad. They make it bad for themselves through all the rape and murder and theft that is part of the society, and they're reaping what they've sown for the most part. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically, Haiti is run by gangs. And if you believe some world, and some would argue the whole world is essentially run by gangs. Some are just a little bit more respectable than others. But
especially that gang in the Vatican. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, one of the leading gangs in Haiti is G9, and their leader is a fellow who goes by the Barbecue, Jimmy Chevalier or Chevalier. Je ne parle français. I don't speak French. So Barbecue, the last several years, has been basically trying to establish dominance in Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. And he is a known Freemason.
Oh,
he wears.
The Freemasons are a bunch of moral people. They just want to make good men better. Now, come on, George, don't say that. That's profaning the wonderful, pure, and godly Masonic lodge that we couldn't live without. Now, come on, George.
Okay, so yes, I should be more versed in the history of Haiti because it was, I believe, the second country to gain its independence in the Americas after the United States. So they basically took it by force.
Yeah, the Haiti has a horrible history, and especially its history. Well, the high point of their history, I see it, is in Papa Dr. Valier, that was in voodoo, and of course Jesuits ran the country, and Papa Dr. Valier had his Tanta Makuts, and they were a black secret police that dressed up like everybody else. And when any of these black savages wanted to steal a woman's purse or drag her off in the back and rape her, the Tanta Makuts stepped out of nowhere, shot and killed them, and executed vengeance right then and there. And you know what? I have a dear lady friend. She's a white woman. She said, when I was living in Haiti with my family, we could walk down the streets of Port-au-Prince and we didn't fear any of the blacks wanting to steal our purses during the rule of Papa Doc Duvalier. But Papa Doc was put out of office by the policies of the Jesuits running the District of Columbia. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, you're talking in your introduction today, and you usually say this every time we're on, is that the Jesuits run the world basically through their secret societies and various other front groups. They run the criminals, and they run the courts and the cops.
Yeah, and one more thing I forgot to add. Papa Doc Duvalier expelled the Jesuits out of Haiti. And that's what brought his downfall. So, but he needs to be praised for doing such a thing. And just like the president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, expelled the Jesuits about, 6-8 months ago. So these guys did the right thing. And unfortunately, Ortega is going to pay for it, just like Papa Doc did. But go ahead.
Okay, so let's just talk about current events. I guess on Sunday, so it would have been the 17th, so-called St. Patrick's Day, there was a shooter running around in Newtown, Pennsylvania, not Newtown, Connecticut, where Sandy Hook took place. And I guess they ordered...
One more thing, George. St. Patrick was not a Catholic. The Catholics stole him from us Baptists. Patrick was a Baptist, but they've made it a Catholic holiday. But go ahead.
So yes, I probably should do a presentation on him, but not today. I mean, it would have been timely since that was just a few days ago. Well, anyhow, so there was I guess a shooter on the loose, so we're told, in Newtown, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, which is, I guess, a suburb of Philly. Yep. Now, this is in Pennsylvania, not Connecticut. Gee, what is the likelihood of there being another gun event in a town called Newtown? Well, I realize it's just a coincidence.
It's a coincidence, George. Come on now. We got to start adopting coincidence theory, okay? So we can blend in with all the other sheeple, because nothing happens as a result of a plan now. Why, that would be conspiracy, George, and we can't talk about that, can we? Go ahead.
Correct. So anyhow, the sheriff of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, is Dan Herron, and he got his master's degree from St. Joseph's University.
So, St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia?
Correct.
Well, that's a wonderful university there, George. Having all those Jesuits at their Jesuit university, I'm sure that really fitted him to be sheriff for the Jesuits of St. Joseph's. Yeah, go ahead.
Correct. I'll be honest, I generally speaking don't look into the infrastructures of certain communities across the country or the world unless something happens. There's a shooting or bombing or some other bit, because, well, I'm busy doing other things. And now, however, you said...
one more thing for the listeners. Remember, Philadelphia is a black and a white Roman Catholic town with a lot of Hispanic invaders in it. It's generally not Protestant. It used to be. And it's generally not white. So if I don't go to Philadelphia because it's so violent and hatefully racist that I don't go to that airport, that racist Philadelphia airport. Last racial issue I had was a few months ago. So That's a hateful, racist, anti-white city, and I would recommend that nobody go there for any reason whatsoever. But go ahead, George.
Not even a tourist?
No, wouldn't go to Philadelphia as a tourist. Why would you want to take your life in your own hands with all those savages in that town? As soon as they see your white face, you're a target.
Well, I mean, I've not been there, but I'd definitely love to go see where they signed the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, I went there once, and what I have this young black girl, and there was a bunch of black children there. And she said, "You had breakfast today? Yeah, breakfast." I came to see the tour of the Independence Hall. I don't care if the black children had breakfast or not. I'm there to take a tour. It's all that way. It's totally degenerate. I wouldn't go there for anything. In fact, when we separate and have our new nation, I'm giving Philadelphia to the blacks. New Jersey and Philadelphia, they can have it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so you said you recently were in Spokane, Washington,
Yes.
because you had to teach a class there. Well, so I just now, as far as I know, there hasn't been like a shooting or bombing or whatever taking place there. However, the mayor of Spokane is a lady.
No, George. When I was out there was 3 shootings. They just didn't report it.
Okay,
The guy said to me, "Yeah, they shot one today and shot 2 the day before." So they're not reporting the shootings in Spokane, I guess.
Okay, well, I guess it doesn't serve their narrative. I mean, well, okay, so the town of Spokane has a population of about 200,000 people, and it's located in Spokane County, which has a population of about 500,000, so 300,000 more than the actual city of Spokane. Now, the mayor of Spokane is Lisa Brown, and she is an associate professor at Gonzaga College there in Spokane.
Good. And they named the new federal courthouse out there from about an Irish Catholic, after an Irish Catholic named Tom Foley District Courthouse there in Spokane. So you got an Irish Catholic federal district courthouse there.
Well, good for them. So
I did go to Gonzaga there one day when I had my meeting, and they have Loyola out there in front of their major hall, and then they have Pierre de Smet, Pierre John de Smet, who was the mass murderer of the Indian nations. He was no friend of the Indians, and I cover that in my book. So de Smet is a very important Jesuit. For those of you listeners who want to check him out. Okay, George, go ahead.
Okay, so as I said, you're talking about 2 different jurisdictions on opposite sides of the country. In Spokane, here on the West Coast, and you're talking Bucks County in Pennsylvania on the East Coast. And it's interesting, it doesn't matter where you are, or what location you're talking about, they seem to be in control everywhere. And
have their universities, George. That's why they got 28 universities here. So the graduates that leave the universities, they can place them in positions of influence and power throughout their American empire, throughout their Holy Roman 14th Amendment American empire. That's why they have their schools.
Okay, whether you're talking the mayor, the sheriff, the chief of police.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Any place of influence or power.
Governor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got a Masonic Jew for a governor here in Pennsylvania now. Don't think for 1 second he's not tied to the Jesuits in Philadelphia.
Oh, are you talking about, would you be talking about Josh Shapiro, who got his law degree from Georgetown?
That's right, George. There you go with another wonderful fact.
Well, I think I've mentioned that before.
Yeah, you have. I just wanted you to repeat it. That was very good, and you appreciate that, George.
Okay, so anyhow, as you know, I live out here in the West Coast in Northern California, and in the county where I live, they just started a podcast called SoCo Chat, Sonoma County Chat, where Paul Gullickson, who's the communications manager for the county, will talk to somebody of importance, a politician.
And I remember this too, George, because I was raised in California. Sonoma County, Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino were the big wine counties, and the Franciscans have huge wineries there. So should not be surprised to see papal control in those 3 counties, Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino.
Well, I mean, Gavin Newsom and the Pelosi families have big interest specifically in Napa County.
Yeah. Yep. Napa was always known for the mentally ill hospital they had there. Whenever somebody wanted to insult somebody, they would say, "You belong in Napa." So Napa is known for its big mental hospital. Go ahead.
Well, they'll still do, but anyhow. So last year, I guess the county started this podcast called SoCo Chat, so where Paul Gullickson, the communications manager for the county, will talk to somebody. And I looked into Gullickson's background, and I couldn't find anything suspicious. He got his undergrad degree from Oregon State in Eugene, or University of Oregon, one of those two. So his education is purely secular. And prior to working with the county, he was, I guess, a columnist for our local communist rag, the Papal Demon Rag. I mean, the press Democrat. And well, anyhow, well,
what's the name of the paper again, George?
The Santa Rosa Press Democrat.
The Center of the Press Democrat. What is that? The name of the paper?
The Santa Rosa Press.
Oh, Santa Rosa Democrat. Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so and as I said before, Sonoma Media Group owns the Press Democrat. They own some other publications as well as the 5 or 6 English-speaking radio stations in the county. And the head of Sonoma Media Group is Larry Arturo, who is a member of the Holy Spirit Catholic Church in Santa Rosa. And he and his wife are both Eucharistic ministers at this church.
Wonderful, wonderful. So they have their allegiance to the Pope of Rome. That king, that political ruler. So they have their allegiance to him. So they took an oath to uphold the Constitution, but they're Roman Catholic and obviously have an allegiance to their fearless leader, the King of Rome, the Pope. So I wonder what they do when they have to make a decision. Well, should I do something that I swore to take an oath of the Constitution, or should I do what the Pope tells me to do? That's always a classic choice they all have to make.
Okay. Well, getting to the broadcast, a recent broadcast from the 28th of last month, Gullickson interviewed a fellow by the name of Marcos Suarez. Not Juarez. It's like Juarez except for with an S.
Suarez? Okay.
Suarez, correct.
Because one of the founding Jesuits with Loyola was Francisco Suarez. No, Suarez wrote Des Regi. He wrote How It's Right to Kill Heretic Kings. That's Des Regi. Francisco Suarez. I quoted my book.
Well, who knows? He's probably a descendant. But anyhow, this Suarez is, I guess, he's the director of economic development for the county, or so I didn't know there was such a position. And as I said, Sonoma County only has a population, maybe 500,000. I didn't realize how is it that they can have all these positions and bureaucracy, all these offices. Well, anyhow, so Gullickson.
I would venture to say, George, in the past, there was a connection here to William Randolph Hearst because he was in Southern California.
Well, this is Northern California.
Oh, this is Northern California. Okay, pardon me.
Just north of San Francisco.
Oh, North San Francisco. Okay.
Okay, so William Randolph Hearst was actually born in San Francisco. And his granddaughter, Patty, actually was a student at Berkeley when she was allegedly kidnapped back in 1974.
Yeah,
that's
another topic. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yes, and of course, she went to St. Ignatius High School in San Francisco.
Goody. Another good Jesuit high school. We can train the children up to be good citizens. And, oh, yes. It's funny how the Jesuits have such a brainwash on the people of this country that they think that they're getting the top-notch education when the Jesuits teach their children. What a disgrace. Go ahead.
Well, okay, I wasn't going to talk about Patty, but allegedly on February the 4th, 1974, so just over 50 years ago, she was allegedly kidnapped by the Sudanese Liberation Army.
By the black, savage Sudanese Liberation Army. Yeah, go ahead. Make sure you always point out their race. Well, that's important.
Okay, so they're almost certainly an FBI creation. So for the next couple of years, they committed a reign of terror in California, robbing banks and things like that. And young Patty was seen holding machine guns and things like that, and participating in the robberies. Well, they said that they used mind control on her, and she was an unwilling participant. Well, as it just so happens, there are 9 members of the gang, 8 of whom were Catholics.
Black Catholics. That's good.
Correct.
We need to teach all these black people to be Catholics. Maybe we can really get a riot going, because Catholicism is a violent religion, much more violent than Islam. So if you want to teach violence and agitation, just teach them Catholicism. Yeah. Remember, most blacks are not Roman Catholics; they're Baptists. Unless some white man has been messing with their religion, they are Baptists or some form of Protestant. But I find that intriguing. That there were 9 of them, 8 of them were Roman Catholics. Very good, George. Good fact.
Okay, so anyhow, so getting back to the so-called chat, which took place on the 28th of last month. So they're talking about a then upcoming event that was supposed to take place on Sunday, March the 3rd. It was a community outreach. It took place at Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church in Windsor, California. It was an outreach to people from Latin America, Mexico, Guatemala.
Oh, let's bring them up here. Yeah, because I went out to the Jesuit novitiate, which they've kicked me out permanently now, and they put a fence around the place. Last time I was in there talking with George, the head Jesuit there were some Spanish speakers, and I said, "What are these here, George?" He says, "Well, they're coming up from Central South America, Mexico." And they try not to say anything about it. So the Jesuits are using their institutions to bring all these alien Hispanic savages up here to create more crime, to justify putting Trump in power and the new right to solve the problem that they created. Go ahead, George.
Okay, yes, I need to address Donald Trump in just a moment, but I just like to finish my point. So a couple of weeks ago, on Sunday, March the 3rd, there was this community outreach for this immigrants, people from Central and South America.
These invaders. They're not immigrants. They're invaders.
Yes.
It's the Aslan movement.
Yes, well, okay.
So let's not call them immigrants. An immigrant goes to a country that loves the country. He wants to go there. He wants to put off his former allegiance. He wants to learn the language and be one of them. That's not what these people are. They hate us, especially if you're white, and they've come here to take it with their Aslan movement. But go ahead.
So are you talking about this? Is there Reconquista?
Reconquista. That's right. We've got to do a program on the Reconquista.
Okay. So anyhow, this was an outreach to hook these people up with any type of service they might need. It was one-stop shopping for food, housing.
Give them money. Yeah, give them a cell phone. Yeah, just help poor souls who are coming up here. They just want a better way of life.
Okay, so okay, so everything, transportation, childcare, education. Of course, they want to make sure they're up to date on their vaccines. Flu or whatever, and so he says specifically, we don't care about your immigration status. We're not going to inquire about that. We're not going to ask how you got here, where are you staying, who's sponsoring you, anything like that. We just want to get you
to the Catholic Church and the CIA and the Lutheran Church, which is run by the papacy. That'll lead to all those criminals. But yeah, we can't ask those questions. That might give rise to wanting to solve the problem. We don't want to do that, do we?
So that begs the question. But as I said, this is done in conjunction with the County of Sonoma, a governmental agency, with this church. Wait a second, I thought there was supposed to be a separation of church and state.
We haven't had separation of church and state since March 9th, 1933.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Well, there again, I don't mean to sound redundant, but, well, I don't believe you, Brother Eric. That sounds like an unfounded conspiracy theory.
Yes, indeed. Will impose military government, emergency war powers military government, and who's standing next to FDR when he on March 4th does the inauguration and says, I'm going to invoke war powers as just as if we were going over the foreign war. And who's standing next to him right there near this little pulpit? Edmund Walsh from Georgetown University. Unbelievable. And 6 Knights of Columbus, honor guard, 6 Knights of Columbus standing behind him walking around, waving their hats. You can watch this on YouTube. Watch the inauguration of Franklin Damnable Roosevelt on March 4th, 1933, and you'll see all those papists giving the message to all the Catholics looking at him that we approve of FDR because we're taking the country on this day, actually the 6th, on Monday. And ever since then, we never have had separation of the papacy from the military government.
Okay, so they no longer try to maintain the illusion of separation of church and state. So this was done. So they're bringing these de facto invaders into this Catholic Church in Northern California on the 3rd of this month. And they're basically, and this is done in collusion with the county of Sonoma. Now, you'd assume they would have had this at a neutral, secular site such as at a hotel or a vet's building or something along those lines. No location with a religious affiliation.
Yeah, well, Chris Pinto's done a very good video recently, I believe. I saw it, where he shows that the Jesuits on the border in their little churches are welcoming these Hispanic savages right up here. That's what I call them. I call them savages, except they are. And so they've come up here, and the papacy's welcome them in here. Now, why don't some white men with money and power resist it? I'll tell you why. Because they're all cowards. That's why. Go ahead, George.
Well, okay, that's
I've been doing this for 20 years, George, 20 to 25 years. I should have several white men with power and wealth supporting what I do. I have zero. They don't care, and I'm everywhere. They don't care. They don't care about losing their country, everything they ever worked for, their forefathers ever worked for. So the white men of this country, effeminate, beaten down, and now don't care. They're getting exactly what they deserve. And that's why I call on my broadcast when I preach to them and for them, it's time to repent for your sins of no nationalism and letting your country go. It's like letting anybody into your house. They take your house, your food, everything. So it's the sin of the white men of this country that are facilitating this and not denouncing the papacy and high-level Freemasonry. Remember the Jesuits, that's really the font of all this wickedness. When that starts to happen, things will change. And it's not going to happen with Trump either. But go ahead, George. I'm sorry. I shouldn't interject all those things.
Oh, no, I as I've said before, that's how I learned. Now, I became cognizant of the whole invasion, if you will, de facto invasion, probably a good 20 years ago when I began hearing about people protesting these people coming in this country illegally. And I know that certain platforms or media outlets, such as Fox News, was one of the few.
It's actually more than that, George. It goes back to Ronald Reagan.
Oh, okay.
He gave a blanket amnesty, in 1984, that sinner, that papal sinner. But go ahead.
Well, I wasn't really paying attention to politics and national events back then. I was a teenager, but I became cognizant of this about 20 years ago. And for a long time, I hear on Fox News, and which was one of the few media outlets that would cover this, they're saying, we need to stop this Hispanic invasion of the United States. But you notice they're saying they identify the ethnicity, but they wouldn't identify the religion.
Right.
They're pulling their punches.
Right, because his Fox News is entirely Catholic. Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, they're all a bunch of Roman Catholics doing battle for the Pope's new right.
Well, you made reference to Donald Trump a moment ago. Over the weekend, he gave, I guess, a rally in Ohio, and he made an ostensibly offhanded comment. He said, "If I don't win this election this year in 2024, there'll be a bloodbath." And the context in which he said that is, he said, it'll be an economic bloodbath. What few jobs, manufacturing jobs are in this country will disappear to other places like Mexico and China. But people, the communist media, like Mika Brzezinski, the daughter of Zbigniew.
The good old Dame of Malta, because Zbigniew was a knight.
Oh, yes, and he went to Loyola, among other things. Went to Loyola High School in Montreal.
Right, that's exactly right.
And
Good,
he was
faithful Jesuit Coadjutor. I have a friend that sued his daughter.
Now,
Go ahead.
See his daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'd love to hear that story one of these days.
Okay.
But oh yes, the Brzezinskis were old friends with the Wojtylas. Zbigniew's father, Thaddeus, was a Polish diplomat. As a matter of fact, he was one of the representatives of the Treaty of Versailles.
Oh, really? Where they raped Germany and guaranteed war in 20 years.
Yes. So, yes. So, as I said, the Brzezinskis go back. Their diplomatic background goes back to at least the 19th century. Now, also the Wojtylas. The name means out for Karol Joseph Wojtyla, Karol Joseph Cardinal Wojtyla, John Paul II. They were actually military men. There was his father was a colonel in the Polish army.
Yep. Yeah, well, the Poles, they're more Polish than they're Catholic, and so they had to suffer during World War II and get their finest manhood killed, where they could be good servants to the communist East after the 1945. But the Jesuits ran Poland for a long time until the first it was the second when they partitioned it, second or third, when Stalin and Hitler partitioned Poland in 39. Yeah, so they had to punish the Polish manhood. There was just too many nationalists in Poland to really successfully conquer them and put them under communism. So that's what we're going to
do. Well, you made reference a moment ago to Lutheran charities, Lutheran social services. Well, in the United States,
that Masonic hellhole run by Scottish Rite Freemasons loyal to the Pope of Rome, facilitating what the Vatican wants. The Lutheran Church is totally apostate. It's the Roman Catholic Church with a Lutheran name. That's all. Go ahead.
Okay, so I probably have said this before, so forgive me for repeating myself. In the United States, there have been since 1980, and this goes back further than that, there have been three major entities Rome has used to facilitate the destruction of the United States. Catholic Charities, which is over 100 years old, established 1916, 1918, thereabouts. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, which was established back in the 1960s, and Jesuit Social Services, which was created in 1980. So,
Jesuit social services for white people? I don't think so, George. It's social services for these Hispanic Roman Catholics and blacks, but not for the white man. We can't do anything for him. Because these white Roman Catholics here are judged liberals, and the Pope hates them as much as he hates us white heretic Baptists and Protestants. Yep.
Okay. So, talking about the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, they're established, I believe, it was 1965 or thereabouts. Each year, they discuss a few different topics about what they need, what their goals and agendas are. Probably redundant. And one of the pressing issues back in the 1960s for them was how to completely desegregate and integrate the entire country. Now, they've been working
so we can totally destroy any white education and white excellence. Integration will destroy that because we want these white people dumbed down and stupid and Africanized and talking black and dressing black and acting black, and so we can have white Africa here in North America, which is what we have now. Go ahead, George.
So they had been working on desegregation in the South since the 1950s, but they said during the 1970s, we want to shift it, bring this to the entire country, specifically in places like Chicago and Boston, Massachusetts.
Catholic Chicago and Catholic Boston. Now, we ought to direct a little question to all these white Roman Catholics that might be listening. Why do you still remain Catholic when your church destroyed your white Catholic culture in Chicago and Boston? I'll tell you why, because you're cowards. You Irish Catholic, you Italian Catholic, all you mafiosos, nothing but a bunch of cowards because you refuse to deal with the power structure that's ruined your communities. It's the Pope and his bishops and his Jesuits. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so I believe there was a district court judge named William McCarthy, if I have the name correctly, who got his undergrad degree from Boston College.
You sound like an Irish Catholic. Irish Catholic from Boston College. Go ahead.
Okay, so he made a court ruling saying that they specifically South Boston, which is colloquially called Southie, was in 1974 something like almost exclusively white. It was like 95%, mostly Catholic and Italian, Irish.
And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Why would they want to integrate that? Yeah, the Irish culture there, you have Catholic culture, you have the Italian Catholic culture. Why would you want to integrate that and destroy it? Mr. Bishop, Mr. Pope, you bring them over here and then destroy their culture and force integration? Go ahead.
Okay, so so this judge rule said, yes, you're right. The blacks were receiving inferior education. So basically,
really? I would retire that and say, what do you mean? The blacks are much more inferior now than they were then, educationally speaking. They had black teachers. They went to black schools. They had a higher academic rating. I have all the proof in my office here. So that's just a communist shibboleth to say, oh, we got to bring the blacks up. They already had a high culture. They had high education. The destroying of it was the forced integration.
Okay, so, and I know we talked about this, 3-4 years ago. There was a series on PBS, Public Broadcast System, where they called Eyes on the Prize, the history of the civil rights with the U.S. in the 1950s and 60s. A completely communist program, but
and they never told you the Jesuit connection. They never told you the Jesuit connection to the civil rights movement, did they?
The producer of the program was
what's that? Go ahead, George. They never showed King's connection to the Jesuits through Chief High-Level Freemason A. Philip Randolph. Don't show the Jesuit connection now to the civil rights movement. God forbid. Go ahead.
Well, the producer of the program, Eye of the Prize, which aired, I believe, back in 1987, PBS originally, was Henry Hampton. And he went to St. Louis High School in Missouri.
Is that the forerunner of St. Louis University that the Jesuits run?
Well, it's their prep school.
Oh, that's the Jesuit prep school. So here we have an attempted, objective documentary, Eye on the Prize, overseen by a Jesuit that wants to destroy the white culture of North America, trained to do so. And people are going to watch that boob tube, think it's going to be objective and truthful? Go ahead, George.
Okay, so anyhow, so Henry Hampton, as I said, he went to his training with the Jesuits at St. Louis High School in Missouri, and it was considered a blockbuster program because it talked to all the living participants of the civil rights movement, 20, 30 years after the fact in 1987. So South Boston was one of the last major school districts in the U.S. not to be integrated. This was 1974, so 50 years ago. So this judge, William McCarthy, who got his undergrad degree, I believe, from Boston College, signed an order saying, yes, they had to integrate for the upcoming school year, 1974-75. So needless to say, even though they're Catholics.
So he helped to destroy the white cultures of the Catholics in Boston on the orders of the Jesuit masters. So this, all you Roman Catholics need to see, is the Jesuits have destroyed your historic white culture, and they will continue to. Just like they've done our historic white Protestant and Baptist culture. Because the problem is you're white. That's the problem.
Okay, so this created a major furor that almost caused a riot at a school meeting.
It should have. So you have a socialist, communist, activist, Jesuit joke. This judge is going to shove down the throats of the people what he wants for them. I don't recall creating a government that we say, oh, you can do anything you want to us if you think it's good for us. that what the Constitution says, or the state constitution of Massachusetts? Just decide anything you want if you think it's good for us. The reason why we're under military government and we're all enemy belligerents, that's why. And they're just reorganizing all their enemy belligerents.
Okay, so this was a major catalyst in the United States of the whole homeschooling movement. Now, homeschooling would become big in the U.S. in the 1990s, but this got started back in the 1970s in places like Boston for parents who said they did not want to go send their children, their Irish or Italian Catholic or Polish Catholics, to these schools.
Yeah.
Where they had to.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? The blacks, I can show you a lot of blacks. They didn't want to send their black children to go to school with white Roman Catholics. They'd already been victimized for many years, for decades, by the white Roman Catholics. They didn't want to go to school with them, but now we're going to force it. We're going to shove it down there, both the throats of these white Roman Catholics and these black Baptists and others. So that's what the military government does. It doesn't care about individuals. It's all about the mass, the people, how we're going to manage them. That's emergency war powers military government since March 9th, 1933. Go ahead. Well, by the way, there's a movie out called Plantation Jones. In Plantation Jones, they had the blacks there. They weren't producing. So this black guy comes in and tells the master, he says, I'll get them to work for you. First thing you got to do is you got to tell them they're all free. Then they all think they're free. They're going to work harder, but all they have is company store money and paper war script like Federal Reserve notes. I mean, it's a classic little short movie. I recommend the listeners watch Plantation Jones. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the punchline, so to speak, is that the majority of these white parents, these white Catholic parents, end up pulling their students out of South Boston. They said, I don't care. We'll send them to a private school. We'll educate them at home, but we're not going to do it. So,
in the meantime, boy, we're going to jack up the property taxes. So the property tax is going to be used to pay for these schools. So these poor white Roman Catholics got to pay a huge property tax, while at the same time paying more money to send them to a private school that can't ultimately succeed, can't ultimately continue, because they're going to keep jacking up the property tax. The sin of property tax. Go ahead, George.
Well, okay. Well, that's another conversation altogether.
Yes,
well, so South Boston basically overnight, within 2 or 3 years, it had gone from being one of the best school districts in the country to one of the worst. Not just in academics, but just in terms of quality of life.
Violence, they had rapes, they had murders, they had thefts, all that good stuff that the Jesuits like to shove on people to weaken them. And they'll use the blacks to do it. Just incite them to hate whitey, and they'll commit crime every day, every way. They kill 10 white people a day in this country. They rape 100 white women today in this country on the average. That's a fact, and I can prove that one too. But that's okay, because we're just white people, right? Terrible white people. Oh, go ahead, George.
Well, I think I mentioned this to you before. I forgot the source. This is, I believe, Red Ice. Okay, so, I'm not endorsing them, but one of the things they brought up was back in the year 2000, the Irish Republic was something like 96% white. It was almost, and all those non-whites were from other European countries, like Germany or Poland or someplace like that. In 2020, so 20 years later, it had been reduced to 80% ethnic Irish. And the majority of those non-Irish are from, say, Africa or the Middle East. And now, as I said, the Irish Republic has been a Catholic country. They're being punished.
They're destroying Catholic Ireland. I have a dear friend who tells me all about it, all the black on white crime there all the time, everything that's being done, bringing in these Africans into Ireland. The government's paying for them, giving places to stay. The average Irishman has nothing. Kind of like what they're doing here in America, Canada, England, Scotland. It's the same game. And that shows you that the white men of these countries are all traitors and cowards, selling out their own people to this program of the Jesuit order and their secret societies.
Okay, so as I said, they've used the Jesuits have used and abused the Irish for centuries.
You can read their thoughts on the Irish if you get the book, The Jesuit Conspiracy by Jacobi Leone. And he quotes the Jesuits in there, the Irish. They're our perfect servants. You give them a cause and they will continue it to the end. And they have this superstitious word of the word church. It's all there. You can read it in the Jesuit Conspiracy. They use the Irish for their purposes. And now that they're finished using them, they're going to miscegenate, race mix them, and they're going to destroy Ireland unless there's a new right in Europe uniting all the white, victimized white men, no matter what their religion is, around a dictator loyal to the Pope that will have his new right, exactly as Martin Lee says in his book, The Beast Reawakens. And that's the whole purpose for this forced integration, to drive the whites in the new right. In the meantime, you got rape, robbery, murder, pillage, plunder every day of the white people, and we're supposed to think it's a wonderful blessing. Go ahead.
Okay, so now they've not, as we've discussed before, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but it seems as if that certain countries are not on the chopping block for right now for destruction, Catholic or otherwise, such as Poland and Finland.
Yep. Not yet. So it's pretty cold. Finland's pretty cold to bring blacks up there, and Arab blacks out of Africa, and it's pretty cold up there. But they have a program for Finland, I'm sure, because you got to drive all those white historic nations into the new right. Remember, the white Protestant Reformation has been destroyed in the 20th century. White people generally are pagans now. They don't read the Bible. There's no Bible-based culture anymore in any white nation. And so therefore, since it's been paganized and de-Bibleized and no more Protestantism, they're perfect dupes to be forcefully race mixed and to be outraged and then to go into the hands of some white leader that will tell the truth and tell exactly what's going on. But he's a Catholic or loyal to the Catholic Church like Trump, and he'll do exactly what he's told with this new right that's coming.
Well, and of course, I don't mean to keep, belaboring Poland, but as I said, historically they're Catholic, whereas Finland has been for close to 500 years they've been Protestant, mostly Lutheran. But as I said, they may have other plans for those respective countries.
Well, yeah, well, they're going to do what they're doing to Sweden. We're going to race mix, bring the blacks and the black Muslims up into Sweden and rob, rape, and murder. Of course, we got to disarm them all so they don't have any guns, so they can't shoot the savages. But we do that to Sweden. We'll do it to Norway and Finland. We got something for them, and we're not going to do that to Russia because we want to build Russia into a strong white communist nation. So when it comes and invade us, it's all a bunch of white soldiers, and they don't have a race problem in their military. Same way with the Chinese. It's all Chinese. They don't have a race problem in their military. So the nations that they're building up are not having miscegenation, but the nations they're destroying, historic white Protestant nations, we're going to miscegenate them to the end.
Well, something I wanted to bring up is there's a series on HBO that aired, a couple different series, Band of Brothers back in 2001 and The Pacific 2002, which was basically the same, except for Band of Brothers took place mostly in Europe and the Pacific took place in, Saipan, Tarawa, Iwo Jima, places like that, the Philippines.
The insane island hopping that got lots of white men, particularly Protestants and Baptists out of the South, killed. The insane island hopping design. That's right, about the Jesuits.
Okay, yes, I've not seen the Pacific, but I just ordered Stephen Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers. I've not read it, so I'm going to work on it. I know that Ambrose, among other things, was a 33rd degree Freemason, but that's right. Besides the point.
No, it's not beside the point. That shows you that his narration is going to be pro-papal. He's never going to denounce the papacy in any of his works.
Okay, and he also he wrote the screenplay for the 1998 film Saving Private Ryan, which was directed by Steven Spielberg, and the main star, well, there are several stars, but the big star was Tom Hanks.
So we have Masonic Jew Steven Spielberg and Freemason Tom Hanks.
Well, yes. Well, Tom Hanks grew up Catholic and Mormon, but he's now a practice. I guess he converted over to Eastern Orthodoxy because of his wife, Rita Wilson.
Well,
however,
there's no difference. Go ahead.
Okay, and of course, he sent his son Colin to Loyola Marymount, Los Angeles.
Oh gosh, got to go through the shibboleth of sending your children to be trained by the Jesuits. Good. It's like Trump and Biden and all those other senators, like Clint Eastwood, and you name it. It's just so sickening. But go ahead, George. I'll try to control myself.
Okay, so I will give a complete analysis of Band of Brothers, but I'd just like to talk about, well, did you see the series?
I watched some of it, and I couldn't stand it, so I just turned it off.
Well, why was that?
Well, they left out some important things in it. Like, talk to me about the Battle of Harkin Forest, would you? Talk to me about that. Talk to me about D-Day, okay? Talk to me about when Hitler gives the order, the High Command gives the order not to destroy the British at Dunkirk. Would you talk to me about that, please? Talk to me about when Patton writes his wife and says, in 10 days, you're going to win the war, and we're going to close the Falaise pocket, and it doesn't get closed. Why does that happen? Talk to me about the Falaise pocket. So if they're not going to deal with those kinds of historical matters, then I just don't want to watch it. It's just entertainment. Forget it.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, Band of Brothers actually deals with some of those topics, such as D-Day, the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes, aka the Battle of the Bulge, Operation Market Garden, and the training of the 101st Airborne. Specifically, it deals with Easy Company, which was one of the units in the 101st Airborne. It was a 2nd Battalion, 106th Parachute Infantry Regiment, which is part of the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles. And one of the major characters in the series and in the book was Herbert Maxwell Sobel, who was born on the 26th of January, 1912, died on September the 30th, 1987. So he's 75 years old. So Sobel was of a Jewish background from Chicago. And his father was a grocer, and he instilled in young Herb the importance of education and study, and also being as physically fit as possible. He has some very admirable attributes. So when the war, he had in the 1930s, he'd entered in the Army Reserves, and when the war started, became regular Army. And he was in 1942. He was placed in charge of Easy Company, and he was tasked with the responsibility of getting them combat ready. They trained in Georgia for something like 6 months, and he didn't have Sobel didn't have a very pleasant reputation. He was known as being a bit of a taskmaster and a petty tyrant. He said they could never be clean enough because they were constantly cleaning, and running and polishing their boots.
And he was all about discipline. Yes. All about discipline. You can't win a war without an undisciplined army. And that's why Patton put the American army in North Africa under severe discipline after Rommel kicked its rear end, and Patton came in and took over. Brother George, I got to go. It's like 3:30 right now, but we're going to end this today. I have an appointment I have to be at, but have some last
words. Can I just, yes. Okay, so anyhow, so he was relieved of command. Now, he didn't tell his men to do anything he wouldn't do himself. When they did their hikes, he went out on them, and he was in the front. So he wasn't a hypocrite.
It was commendable. That's what a good commander does.
Okay, so he was relieved of command, and he ended up dying in obscurity. He got married to a Catholic girl. Surprise, surprise. And even though he never officially converted over to Catholicism, he raised his sons as Catholics. They're baptized and they went to the local Catholic church.
Yeah, the Jesuits got what they wanted. That's right.
Okay, so I know we had to end this somewhat abruptly.
Yes, we
So
do.
he died in a nursing home, basically of malnutrition. He starved himself to death because he didn't like the food and he didn't want to take a feeding tube, and which is a really undignified way to go. I mean, it would have been more glorious if he had been killed in combat or something.
Yeah.
But rather,
Just like Patton's death, the inglorious way that he went. They broke his neck. They shot him with a rubber bullet and broke his neck. And then they put him in this horrible traction and tortured him until some doctor came in and said, you can't be doing that. It's not good for him. So they tortured him to death. Anybody that was a serious general, they either killed outright or tortured him to death. Oh, okay. That's another topic, George. So why don't you give a conclusion, then we got to go. Okay.
Okay. If people have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, they can email me. If they want to send me some information, just drop me a line and say hello. And please let me know where you're emailing me from. They can do so at georgewidger1969@gmail.com. georgwidger1969@gmail.com. If they didn't get that from right now, they can get it from you, brother. And God willing, we'll get together soon.
Amen. Hopefully we'll get together again next week. I'll be away. I'm going to be going to see Kathy O'Brien and Dr. Artis in Michigan. They have a seminar that they're putting on, and I'm going to have the pleasure of meeting that virtuous, decent, good woman, Kathy O'Brien, who, with Mark Phillips, wrote Transformation of America, and also Dr. Artis, who had the courage enough to blame the Jesuit order for the entire coronavirus conspiracy and also the vaccine. So I'm going to have the pleasure of meeting those two dear people this weekend, so I appreciate your prayers. So, continuing. My brother Eric John Phelps, 24/7 World Radio. Thank you for tuning in. I have a book, Vatican Assassins, One in the House of My Friends. Please go to my website, vaticanassassins.org. You can purchase there or 24/7 World Radio. And you can also purchase my broadcast also. Lastly, and if you wish to make a donation, you can donate through PayPal at rbpbdonate@comcast.net, rbpbdonate@comcast.net. Or you can send a donation through Cash App. Cash App is Eric, ERIC, John, JON, PHELPS. And appreciate that. I don't have a bank now where I'm not able to Zelle anything. So those are the two options I have. So if you want to give, please do. And until the meantime, we get together again. Please pray for George and myself 2 minutes a day, lifting up holy hands without wrath or doubting, seeking the Lord that he may use us to resist evil unto blood, striving against sin, pursuant to Hebrews 12:4. So until that day, Maranatha.